Greetings, friends. Who are the bad mind people, and how can you protect yourself against them? Now, this is a subject I did discuss over a year ago. It has to do with Ghana and my experiences there. And I said I've already discussed most of my experiences there, but I wanted to come back to this one because it's been more than a year since I talked about it. I can rehash this story, or perspective, if you may call it, for you here. And I was in Ghana initially in 2010 for some months, and then again in 2011, about a similar amount of time, some months, and then again 2015, about 4 months, and the same in 2016. So it's been some time, but I'm putting together this story again. And the bad mind people, this is relating to my perspective from Blinksman or Paul, my good Ghanaian friend, and then the group of people we'd be hanging around. So sort of in that sort of language. And I know some people look down on Pidgin English, they might make fun of it. Of course it's not English, but sometimes a different language can just make a catchy word if it's borrowed something from English. And I like that word. It has a very good use. It captures something there in Ghana. But actually the bad mind mentality, that exists across the world. But I'll just be giving you, that perspective from my time there. So they may also be referred to as the blood clot, or just blood clot. They're blood clot, or they're Babylon. Those basically mean the same thing as the bad mind people. And at least that was my experience. Maybe other people would disagree. That was my experience. And they fit into three basic categories as I'm describing it here. Number one are the people who just don't like weed. They don't like marijuana. They don't like that you're smoking it. They don't like the smell of it. They may smile and greet you when you're passing by. Everything's cool, but then they will go and call the police on you. So you must not trust these people. You must move underground, and I'll discuss more about that later on. So those people are all around, even though cannabis is popular. Many people enjoy it, but then the mentality against it is always there. But these people, they'll often not be open about it. They'll just pretend that everything's cool, and then they just have a bad mind. They just have a bad heart, and it acts against you. Number two, the bad mind people consist of people who want to get something out of you. So these are people who aren't going to call the police on you, at least not right away. They want to be your friend. They want to shake your hand, hang out with you. But it won't be long before they'll start asking you for something, maybe some money, some small money. Oh, can I get some food? I need to get some food. And can't you give me some money? And it can escalate from one thing to the next. So they basically want money. Most people just want money. Although some people want things of status, like your CD player or your shoes. Those are nice shoes that Blinksman got in America because he was working in America. So he brought some American stuff back to Ghana, and people notice that. Hey, Blinksman, you're my good friend from back in the day. Can you give me those shoes? How about those headphones? Can you give them to me? And then the same person might try to sell them later. They might want to hold on to them for some time, but then sell them for money. So even your own so-called friends, you really can't trust. I guess I'm speaking from my perspective, but I'm speaking from my good friend's perspective too. Basically, it's just us against the world. And number three, the bad mind people are jealous and inquisitive people. This does overlap with the second categorization as just people who want to get something from you. Inquisitive people often want to get something from you. But then there are just inquisitive people. Many people are inquisitive. I don't know if this is like just Ghana. It could be many countries. It's not so much something you would find in a big western city. Perhaps you would find it in the countryside. But for whatever reason, this town, people will be asking you just what's your, they want to know stuff. They want to know where you're going. That's often, that's an innocent question. Where are you going? But can you really be discussing that all the time, especially when you don't know a person? And even if you do know them, even if they're an acquaintance, that's irritating. And it's also somewhat dangerous because information is harmful if it gets into the hands of the wrong people. So if you're trying to start a project in Africa, if you're trying to do a business, like let alone, a volunteer organization, you have to be careful, and you'd be surprised how information can get out there, and it just spreads. You can't trust bank managers. You can't trust government officials. You certainly can't trust the police or soldiers on the roadside. So we'll get to some of the ways that you can deal with this. I'm just describing who the bad mind people, the jealous people and inquisitive people. Those there's a bit of an overlap there. Many jealous people might be your friend from back in the day. And now this is not from my perspective. This is from my Ghanaian friend. But I mean, really, when someone like that rises out of what they would call the ghetto, it's not really what an American would recognize as a ghetto. But when someone rises up out of that and they're living in a nice house and they're obviously doing things, and all their childhood friends are still doing the same thing, like not really doing anything, just hanging around. And yeah, probably smoking too much. There's nothing wrong with weed, but then you should do something with your life too. So if you just want to smoke weed and listen to music and not do anything, well, that's a bit different. And that's kind of the situation there. But then that breeds the jealous mind, the bad mind. They will want to get things out of you. They will, want to know your details, know your moves, and who knows what they could do. I wouldn't say they would report something to the police. You never know, but you couldn't trust them. They could take something, especially if they know when you're coming and going from the house. They might just show up at your house unannounced. They might think that they can hang around your house all the time now. They can play on your video game system and just, can maintain that good old times, and then you may try to employ them in different ways, and then you'll realize that that's not working either, because now they're asking you for more money, and they're just getting greedier. They're getting the bad mind. They're getting the jealousy. They're getting the jealous mind. So some bad mind people even turn to witchcraft, which is a fact of life in sub-Saharan Africa. It's just something that happens. All levels of society, including educated people, including businessmen, politicians. Everyone knows about witchcraft. So that's why you have to be extra certain of the bad mind mentality. It includes the bad mind mentality, inquisitive people, people who want to know too much. That even includes pastors. And it especially includes pastors. In fact, there are many false prophets. Many false prophets. They preach the word, and all they want is money. And they'll even be wearing a gold suit with a gold tie. I don't mean literally gold, but it'll be a gold suit, gold tie, nice clothing, ring. They want to visit my friend's parents, and then she's devout. She's an evangelist, and she's giving them money. She's getting used by the church. They bleed you for money. It's very corrupt, and that corruption is across society. That includes the government. So let me get into how do you protect yourself from these people? Well, secrecy. You have to move underground. You really can't be talking about too many things, but you don't want to be antisocial. It's a great community there. So you find other things to talk about. You hang out with many people. It's a very friendly culture, far more open than anything in a Western city. Now, you can be hanging out with people. This includes my own activity, but you just don't talk about certain things, or you change the conversation a bit. What's important is smiling a lot, being confident, being positive, being fluid in a conversation. Your tone, your body language, I've talked about that before. That's important in being positive and taking control of any interaction, so that you could even change it to something else, and then they will forget what they asked you about. You'd be like responding by something that kind of doesn't quite answer their question, but it shows them respect. That's a way of dealing with inquisitive women too, but you can try that tactic with anyone who's being overly inquisitive. The bad mind person is also not very smart. So they reveal their ways. You can usually spot them if you're watching. If you're looking for the bad mind person, you can spot them because they're clumsy. Their approach is clumsy. Some of them are craftier, so you have to watch out. Most people give themselves away by their expressions, by their eyes, and of course by their actions. You can know someone by their actions, but if you're very intuitive, you can feel that something's not right with someone when you study their expression. It's very hard for people to learn to disguise these things. Only psychopaths and people who are very trained can do that. So, for example, taking control of a situation, I've spoken of bribery in the past. If you travel on the country roads, it's certain that you're going to be stopped by the police. They stop every motorist, usually. It's just a normal thing. There are roadblocks. So they don't always stop you at a barrier. A barrier might be every 30 miles or 20 miles or not even. They set them up at different times of the day. If it's raining, they probably won't be manning the barrier. But if it's a nice day, there may be soldiers there or police. The police basically dress in blue camo. It looks pretty badass, and they have submachine guns. And they're looking for the eye contact, so you want to slow the car down. And this is basically Blinksman. This is Paul. He's very good at this. You slow the car down enough, but not so slow that you give them too much time to think. You're making eye contact with them, and before they've made a decision to flag you down, you've already passed the barricade. It's something that can happen in less than 10 seconds. But because you approached them not too fast, you didn't insult them and then make them angry and immediately blow their whistle or whatever. And then again, of course, you're inevitably going to be stopped. It's going to happen, and then you're going to have to bribe them. And then again, you do it in a subtle way because the police don't want anyone else to know what's happening. But this is just a normal thing. You have to bribe them because then you could be in real trouble, even though it's against the law. So that's just the way it is. And you have to conduct yourself the same way with customs officials, with border officials. When I crossed into Togo, that was a very stressful situation. That was a pressure cooker. There were many officers there. It wasn't so much the Togolese officials, it was the Ghanaian officials who were being the most intimidating. They had many soldiers there. Their officers, they were saying, "What, you don't have a pen? You will pay me money for this pen that you must use to fill out this paperwork." It was very stressful, but Paul handled it all excellently. And because I did not have a return visa to come back into Ghana, and then a few days later when we were passing back, the customs officer is looking at my passport, and he's like, "Well, you don't have are you aware that this is not a return visa?" And without missing a beat, Paul was like, "Yes, we're aware." And Paul's a big, strong dude, and the customs officer he was taken aback by that. Even though he's technically the man with the power, he didn't say anything. He gave the passport back. And then they were trying to give us some hassle about vaccinations or something, some random stuff. It's all just a circus. It's all just bad mind people. Babylon, blood clot, bad mind mentality. And you just deal with them respectfully. You overcome the positivity. This is a negativity. And you're just overcoming that with positivity because you never let yourself be intimidated. Never show any intimidation. Never come down to their level. That's where they want you. And then they can start using you and bleeding you for whatever they want. Because they desire power. Because they don't know how to make it for themselves. So the only way that they can experience happiness is to take power, to take wealth from other people. They never learned that they could do it on their own. No one ever showed them. No one ever taught them. But that they can learn. But for whatever reason, they stay in that bad mind. It affects many people. And therefore, you must move underground. You must never show your ways. You must only trust the men who are closest to you, who you have the closest bond with. You cannot even trust family. You cannot even trust someone in a respectable position of power. Like I said, bankers, bureaucrats, police officers. No, you have to rely on your wits, your positivity. You have to trust in yourself, trust in God to guide you, and you will overcome the bad mind mentality every single time. Miracles work in in mysterious ways, my friends. Now, it's a medieval world out there. It's a neo-medieval world, not just Africa, most of the world. What do I mean by that? I mean, states aren't very powerful. Everything collapses into tribal groups, cultural groupings. Smaller organizations, you can only rely on men who you know, who you have a personal bond with. You can trust them, and you don't need to. You can open up to them, and no one else. And then inevitably you will have to work with other people, though. If you're doing business, if you're doing projects, you have to so-called trust other people. It's inevitable. So you follow the advice of Sun Tzu. You follow the advice of my friend Paul, who I agree with his advice, and you bring in people from outside. You bring in people from outside the town, especially in a local town where everyone knows each other. Can you imagine all the gossip? Can you imagine all the stuff that would be going on? It's like a cesspool. Not that the town itself is bad, but that mentality. It's infectious. You must employ people from outside that town. You can get them from the village. Perhaps this is sounding Machiavellian or ruthless. It's not. It's just a fact of psychology and sociology, I suppose you could say. You can, because those people are beholden to no one but you. Those people don't have a link over there where you're bringing them. Why did I say Sun Tzu? The Art of War. He wrote that, or supposedly he or some other writers in ancient China over 2,000 years ago. And he's talking about bringing troops into enemy territory. He's close to home. The troops can even break away from your army. You can lose control of them because soldiers have never been that hard to control on campaign. But when you bring them far away from their home, where they know that they must rely only on you and each other now, on their fellow soldiers, then you can rely on them. Then they will be faithful. Then they will be loyal. So that's a bit of, maybe a bit Machiavellian, but that's kind of negative. But no, I want to finish just with the positivity. You have to be more positive than the bad mind. You have to move underground. You have to be secretive, and everything will take care of itself. And do not fear. Hasta luego, amigos.